If you walk into a pet store today, just to buy a fish,
Yeah.
you might think you're just looking at biology, like you're just looking at a nature display.
Right. Just a pretty animal in a tank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're actually staring at this incredibly ruthless, mathematically precise menu. It's this system where Mother Nature's survival traits have a literal dollar amount slapped on them.
Oh, absolutely. You're looking at a live-action stock market. I mean, every millimeter of fin length, every little splash of neon color, every biological adaptation, it all has a measurable wholesale cost, long before that animal ever hits a glass tank in a retail store.
Which is just such a wild way to think about a living creature.
It really is.
We assume these niche hobbies, especially things like keeping a peaceful home aquarium, are somewhat removed from the cutthroat mechanics of, global supply chains.
Yeah, you think it's just a relaxing hobby.
Right. But they aren't. And that's what we're pulling apart today. We're looking at this really fantastic dispatch from an aquarist named Ang. It's a personal blog entry titled Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 322, which was published on August 19th, 2026.
And what makes Ang's notes so compelling here is the scale of the whole thing. We're not talking about some massive commercial fishery or a giant public aquarium.
Right.
We're talking about an incredibly tiny species of fish and a hobbyist who honestly just wanted to take a few good pictures.
Yeah, literally just taking photos.
Exactly. But by paying attention to the micro details, Ang ends up uncovering this massive underlying economic reality of the pet trade.
So to set the stage, Ang is looking specifically at this tiny schooling fish called Pseudomugil gertrudae, which is quite a mouthful.
It is.
So if you actually go to a pet store, you probably won't see that name at all.
No, definitely not.
The store Ang visited just slapped the name spotted-furcata on the tank,
Mm.
which I guess is to make it sell faster. It's
Okay.
much catchier, easier to pronounce if you're just a casual buyer.
Well, it strips away the intimidating scientific nomenclature, right? The whole retail environment is entirely designed to reduce friction for the consumer. If someone has to struggle to read the label on the tank, or they feel stupid trying to pronounce Pseudomugil, they might second-guess the purchase entirely.
But the generic name really does this specific species a disservice, I think, because their physical traits are just staggering.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
Yeah. Ang describes these fish as having these brilliant, piercing, bright blue eyes and incredibly intricate spotted fins. But the catch is their scale.
Oh, right. The size.
They are true nanofish. They are so remarkably small that to even appreciate these physical details, Ang actually had to go out and buy a brand new mobile phone camera.
Just for the fish.
Yeah, one with improved macro capabilities. Because without that specialized macro lens pulling the image forward, the fish just look like little gray darts, darting around the water.
And that technological requirement, the fact that you need a macro lens just to see the fish properly, it perfectly mirrors the environmental requirement to keep them.
Oh, how so?
Well, you can't just drop nanofish into a standard 50-gallon living room aquarium. It doesn't work.
I was trying to picture this when reading the source, and it really reminds me of framing a miniature painting.
Okay.
If you take a beautifully detailed, 2-inch watercolor painting, and you just pin it to the middle of a massive, blank white gallery wall,
It's totally lost.
it completely vanishes. It looks like a smudge from across the room. To make people actually see it, you have to engineer the environment. You need a highly specific, intimate frame. You need forced perspective, custom lighting, all to force the human eye to scale down and actually engage with the subject.
That is a brilliant analogy, and that's exactly what aquascaping actually is. Aquascaping is the art of building that custom frame.
Right?
For nanofish, you are engineering a miniature underwater world.
Yeah.
You're using dense, proportionately scaled aquatic plants. You're using specifically selected tiny stones and driftwood.
Using those little metal tweezers to plant everything.
Yes, exactly. The long tweezers. You are creating a microhabitat that complements the scale of the fish so they don't get lost in all that negative space. It's a really intense discipline.
But appreciating that beauty depends entirely on which fish you're actually looking at. Because the males and the females of this species look like completely different animals.
Yeah, this is the biological concept of sexual dimorphism.
Right.
And in this specific rainbow fish, it is extreme.
According to Ang's notes, the males are the absolute showstoppers here. They carry all the visual drama.
Every bit of it.
They possess these dramatically elongated, extended, sail-like fins. the dorsal, the anal, the pectoral fins, and when they flare up to show off to each other, they look like tiny, vibrant underwater galleons gliding through the water.
But you have to remember, growing and maintaining those fins takes a massive amount of metabolic energy.
Oh, I bet.
And swimming with them takes even more energy because it creates all this physical drag in the water. The males are essentially carrying a biological tax just to prove their genetic fitness to a potential mate.
Meanwhile, the females are basically flying under the radar entirely.
Okay.
Eng notes they have totally muted coloration and they completely lack those dramatic extended fins.
Because their biological imperative is survival and reproduction. The females carry the eggs, they need to blend into the riverbed, they need to avoid predators, and they just need to stay alive.
So they can't be flashy.
Right. The males are essentially bright, flashing, expendable genetic advertisers.
Okay, wait. If the males are the ones carrying all this visual drama, which is the whole reason an aquarist would want to frame them in a beautifully planted tank in the first place.
Yeah.
This makes Aang's discovery at the pet store completely baffling to me.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting.
Because Aang takes these macro photos at the store, goes home, compares them to images of the species online, and realizes every single fish in that spotted-furcata tank was female.
The whole tank?
The entire population in the store. There wasn't a single sail-like fin or bright blue flash in the whole place. The store is deliberately hiding the best product. Why on earth would they do that?
Well, you have to think about it from the buyer's perspective. And by buyer, I mean the store. The person making the wholesale orders for that pet store isn't thinking about the biological romance of the fish.
Right.
They are looking at a spreadsheet. And Aang proposes a very grounded hypothesis here. The store only stocks the females because they are significantly cheaper to buy in bulk.
Because they lack the flashy colors.
Exactly. Aang brings up the guppy market as the perfect precedent for this.
Okay, I know guppies.
Right, everyone knows guppies. They basically shaped the modern aquarium trade's pricing model. The male guppies, with their massive flowing tails and all those neon colors, command a premium price.
Right.
The females, which are actually larger but mostly gray, are cheap. Aang is theorizing that the wholesale market has quantified the biological tax of the spotted blue-eye rainbowfish in the exact same way.
But surely upselling a premium male fish yields better margins for the retail store, doesn't it?
You would think so.
Because if I have a dedicated aquarist, I'm already spending hundreds of dollars on specialized lights, CO2 injection systems, expensive aquarium soil to build this living art. I want the premium fish. Why wouldn't the store at least stock a few males as a display model to tempt me? By only stocking the muted females, they're essentially forcing me to walk out the door and hunt for the males from some online breeder. It just seems like a terrible retail strategy.
See, you're thinking like a boutique aquascaping gallery.
Oh, okay.
But a general pet store operates on an entirely different set of physical and economic mechanisms. Let's unpack the wholesale logistics for a second. When a store orders fish, they don't just pay for the animal itself.
Right, they pay for shipping.
They pay what's called a landed cost. That includes the fish, the heavy plastic bag of water it ships in, the oxygen pumped into that bag, and the overnight air freight to get it there.
Okay, so the weight of the water and the space in the box dictate the shipping cost.
Exactly. Now factor in the biological tax we just talked about. Those male rainbowfish with their massive sail-like fins require more oxygen. They have a higher metabolic demand overall.
Oh, wow.
And those elaborate fins are also incredibly delicate, meaning they are far more prone to stress, fin rot, and disease during what is a very chaotic 24-hour shipping process.
They get bumped around on an airplane.
Exactly.
So they have a higher mortality rate in transit.
A significantly higher mortality rate. In the wholesale trade, it's called DOA, dead on arrival.
Oh, that's sad.
It is. If a store orders 100 cheap, robust, short-finned females, maybe 95 survive the trip. But if they order 100 expensive, delicate, highly stressed males, maybe only 60 survive.
Wow.
And the store has to eat that loss. The profit margins vanish instantly.
That is insane. So the wholesale catalog literally itemizes evolutionary traits. The store isn't just deciding against pretty colors. They are literally calculating the shipping liability of a biological adaptation.
That's exactly it. And then there's the consumer psychology side of it, too.
Right.
A general store needs volume turnover. Imagine a casual family walks in looking for a quote-unquote small active fish for their kid's standard 10-gallon tank.
The classic starter tank.
Right. If the store stocks the males and prices them at, say, $12 a fish just to cover those landed costs. And the DOA risk, the casual buyer box, $12 for a 1-inch fish? No way.
Too expensive.
But if they stock the hardy females and sell them for $3 each, the family buys a school of 6 without thinking twice.
They just want something swimming around in there.
Exactly. The store turns a profit, they clear out the tank, and they can order more.
So they completely optimize for the lowest common denominator.
They have to. They bet that the average customer won't know the difference or simply won't care enough to demand the males. The store is perfectly fine letting the hyper-dedicated hobbyist walk out the door because trying to cater to that niche guy with the macro lens is an economic liability.
That completely flips how I look at those tanks now.
Right.
We tend to think of a pet store as this curated library of nature, but it's really just a highly filtered choke point of logistics and risk management.
Yeah, the market has placed a literal premium monetary value on the male's biological burden and then priced it completely out of the local retail ecosystem.
Which brings us to what I think is the most fascinating part of Ang's notes.
Mm-hmm.
Because you figure all this out, right? You crack the code. You realize the store is giving you the subpar, muted version of this species. The natural instinct, especially in today's, consumer culture, is to get mad, go online, find a premium breeder, and overnight ship a dozen of the most spectacular male rainbow fish directly to your house.
Just to prove you beat the system.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is the modern hobbyist trap right there. This idea that purchasing power equals mastery.
Right, like if I buy the expensive thing, I am a serious aquarist. But Ang doesn't do that. Ang actually takes a massive step back and starts reflecting on past failures instead.
Which is so refreshing.
It is. The notes mention that many moons ago, Ang tried keeping tetras, which is another group of small schooling fish, and Ang very openly admits to having very limited success with them.
Tetras can be notoriously finicky about their water parameters.
And that past failure basically haunts the current situation for Ang.
Yeah, it acts as a protective psychological boundary.
So Ang concludes the post by explicitly deciding not to explore breeding or keeping these nano rainbowfish right now.
Yeah.
Ang writes that taking on this tiny species would require a much better fish room setup.
Yeah.
It would demand a massive amount of indulgence, time, and sheer dedication that simply isn't available right now.
And that level of restraint is incredibly rare today.
Oh, totally.
We live in an era of absolute information overload where you can watch 3 YouTube tutorials on advanced aquascaping and suddenly feel like you're an expert. You understand the nitrogen cycle, you go out and buy the macro lens, you crack the economic mystery of the pet store. All of that intellectual thrill pushes you toward acquisition.
Yes, it's the espresso machine dilemma. I see this all the time. The espresso machine dilemma. Someone decides they want the perfect cup of coffee at home, right?
Oh, right, okay.
So they spend weeks researching on Reddit claims. They understand extraction yields, they get into pressure profiling and water chemistry.
They fall down the rabbit hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they go out and buy a $3,000 commercial-grade dual-boiler espresso machine with the gorgeous bottomless portafilter.
Oh, wow.
But they don't actually have the counter space for it in their kitchen. And more importantly, they completely lack the daily discipline. They do not have the patience to stand there at 6 in the morning, meticulously dialing in the burr grinder, weighing the beans to the 10th of a gram, tamping it perfectly, pulling the shot, and then thoroughly cleaning the steam wand for work.
Yeah, they fall in love with the idea of the hobby, not the daily maintenance of the hobby.
Exactly. Appreciating the art, or even intellectually understanding the mechanics behind the art, does not mean you are currently equipped to execute it. Ang looks at the prospect of maintaining perfectly pristine water conditions, dialing in the microfoods required for these tiny fish, and managing a dedicated breeding setup, and basically says, no, I appreciate them, but I am not ready.
It highlights a really profound shift from just consuming a hobby to actually practicing a discipline. Ang recognizes that bringing a living creature into your home, especially one as demanding as a premium nanofish, requires an environment that genuinely supports it, not just a consumer who desires it.
Wow.
The desire to hoard beauty just because you can afford it is a very powerful human urge.
We really just want to possess the thing we've deciphered.
We do. But true mastery in a niche field often looks like knowing exactly when to walk away. The fact that Ang is willing to wait for the proper fish room setup, that patience validates Ang's expertise far more than impulse buying a tank full of expensive males ever could.
It's such a brilliant, unexpected takeaway from what is essentially a blog post about taking pictures of tiny fish.
It really escalated.
It did. We started out by just trying to get a decent look at a 2-inch rainbow fish, with a macro lens.
Which then exposed a glaring absence in the retail tank.
Right, the missing males, which then pulled us into the logistics of the wholesale pet trade. We're talking shipping mortalities, metabolic taxes, and how bright colors literally dictate market margins.
Yeah.
And finally, we end up staring down the psychological mirror of our own consumer habits and the restraint required to actually be a responsible hobbyist.
Yeah.
It just goes to show, if you zoom in far enough, the micro always explains the macro.
It absolutely proves that if you actually look closely at the mundane details of the world, the underlying systems are always there waiting to be deciphered.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a slightly different angle to ponder. Something that builds on this entire concept of biological traits and market value. We've spent this whole time talking about the human economy. We talked about how human aquarists, and by extension the wholesale market, put a massive premium monetary value on those extravagant, sail-like fins and bright blue eyes.
Right.
We pay top dollar because we find them aesthetically beautiful. We want to frame them in our living room glass boxes.
We artificially subsidize the aesthetic.
Yes, we do. But think about those fish out in the wild for a second. Think about the natural river systems in Australia or New Guinea where they actually come from.
Okay.
Those exact same flashy traits, the vibrant blues, the extended sails that make the males premium to human eyes, are a massive liability out there.
Oh, of course.
They make those males premium, highly visible, slow-moving targets for natural predators.
They're a beacon for bigger fish.
Exactly. So by selectively breeding and paying top dollar for the most extravagant, slowest, brightest males, just to put them in our safe, enclosed aquariums, we are doing something deeply weird. Are we artificially rewarding and mathematically pricing the exact evolutionary traits that make survival in the wild virtually impossible?
We are isolating a biological vulnerability, assigning it luxury status, and then mass-producing it for our own entertainment.
Exactly. The very thing that makes the spotted blue-eye rainbowfish an expensive jewel in a planted tank is the exact same thing that makes it an easy meal in a river.
That's wild to think about.
We've completely inverted natural selection with a credit card. It's definitely something to think about the next time you stop to admire something beautiful behind glass.